Merhaba herkese.
Hello, everyone.
Böyle bir program hazırladığınız için
I
teşekkür
I
ederim.
would like to thank you for having
Evet,
prepared this event.
yaklaşık 14 gün sonra
Uh,
tatbikatların
2 weeks
son
later,
dönümüne gireceğiz.
we will be
28
commemorating the
Roboski
10th anniversary
Roboski
of the
Massacre var.
Roboski event.
Kısaca ben
What
bahsedeyim.
was
Onun öncesini de biraz birkaç cümle
experienced in
aktarayım.
Roboski 10 years ago?
O gün
I would like to talk about this briefly
öncesinde tabii biz sınırda yaşadığımız için yani daha
because we
doğrusu
live on the border.
insanların kafasında canlandırdığı bir sınır biçimi de yok. Sadece dağlarla
There is no
sınırlı
border in the
dağlar
defined
var
manner.
ve o
We have very high mountains,
üzerine
and on top of that, one of those
blok
mountains,
beton koymuşlar. Oraya da
there is
sınır demişler.
a
Dolayısıyla
block, concrete block, and
gelirken
they
de
call that the frontier. While
oradaki
they're
insanlara sormamışlar.
drawing that frontier, they never asked
Mezarların diğer
people
tarafındaki
living
insanlar da
there. There's
bu
some of the land of the people who live
diğer
in,
taraftaki
in
detayları
on this
detaylı
side
bir şekilde
remained on the other side, and of course relatives are on the other side, so families were divided. So it is not a matter of frontier trade with another nation. There is no passport usually used when that trade is being carried out. We either use mules or we go on foot to exchange goods. We also intermarry with the people on the other side. Beyond all kinds of trade, this is a relationship of relatives among each other, kinship, a whole network of kinship on the two sides. If something is inexpensive on the other side, if you bring it into Turkey, you profit from this. And this way, both sides profit from that trade. And this has been going on for years and decades. And therefore, the night of the 28th December 2011, if we talk about that, well, people go during the day and come back at night. And the military knows this, that they always cross the frontier. The drone, the unmanned aerial vehicle, followed people from the moment they left the village to the moment they were coming back. The people went to the frontier, but then did not cross the frontier and came back. They came back because there was going to be a kind of raid, and perhaps there would be a firing. They had this sentiment. Despite this, this was the rumor, but these people said they would go to the other side. That's the decision they made. They went to the other side. They bought gasoline and cigarettes, and they brought it back. After having brought it back, because this is under the control of the military, and while these people were going, they left someone behind to watch. And they realize that there is no raid on the road. When they come to the frontier, they call their relatives, but now they realize there is a raid, and so when they communicate with their relatives, they ask them whether they should go back or they should come back to the village, or remain there
kış şartlarından kaynaklı bir
in a
geri
certain
plana
sense,
atılıyor
stay put.
içerisinde.
And if that is the
Orada
case, they would be,
iki grup olması
if
bekleniyor.
they move, there would be a problem. So
O
they
bekleme
stayed put there.
süresince
They were
bir
in
yarım
two
saat
groups. They waited for half an hour.
bekleyişlediler ve tam o sırada
Just then,
Türk savaş uçakları F-16'ları dediğimiz
Turkish
Roboski
F-16s, warplanes,
birinci grubu
the
bombardıman
first
ediyor.
group,
O gruptan yaklaşık 19 insan yaşamını yitirdi.
bombed one of the
Gerçekleştirdi.
groups, and 19 people lost their
6 kişi
lives.
hayat kurtuldu.
4 people were
Sonra üçüncü
alive
bomba
despite the
3
bombardment.
kişi daha
Then a
yaşamını
second bomb, 3 more died. One person
sonra
remained
geri plana
alive.
gelince diğer ikinci grup
When
bu
the second group was observed,
barınacak bir yer, kayalık aradılar.
they
Kayalıkta
looked for a place to shelter themselves
sınırda
under rocks,
dördüncü bomba dediğimiz yani üçüncü, dördüncü bomba
something like a
bu
cave,
grubun üzerine
and the third and
atıldı
fourth bombs
ve
were thrown
%11
on top of them,
insan
and
yaşamını yitirdi
11
bu
more
süreçte.
people lost their lives.
Toplamda 3 kişi
Overall,
yaralandı, bir kişi
3 people remained alive.
ağır yaralandı.
One was
Ama
heavily
bu
wounded.
bombardıman
Of
sadece
course, this
2 dakika,
bombardment
3 dakika içerisinde gerçekleşen bir
was not
bombardman değil.
something that was
Şunu söyleyelim
that
o
occurred
gece
within 2 or 3
bombardımana
minutes.
başlamasıyla birlikte gözcüler
That night,
köye haber veriyorlar.
the people who were on the watch
Bombardıman
let
olduğunu,
the village know by
yapıldığını
phone
ve
that there was a bombardment,
askeriyeyle iletişime geçilmesi
and
gerektiğini söylediler.
asked the villagers to
Roboski'de
establish communication with the military. And the families in Roboski
Antiterör komutanı
called the commander of the precinct. The commander said, "Don't worry." And 45 minutes later, another bombardment took place when 15 more people lost their lives. The commander of the precinct of the gendarmerie said that there was only firing on the group to scare them. But it was reported to him that there were dead people, and this was the answer that he gave. So for 45 minutes, these people were bombardment. They gave the information, the families that is gave the information, but nothing was done to intervene. Later, the soldiers that made a kind of raid there went back home and met the families. Why are you bombarding the people who are coming back to their village? Asked the families, and they said no, this was just to scare them. And rapidly they left the village. So this is the kind of night that they went through. This is a distance of 1 hour from the village where these people were bombarded. And when the villagers went, they saw the wounded, the bodies that were dismembered. They take them to hospitals. Unfortunately, technically, there was no intervention. The wounded were carried on the backs of their relatives. They brought them to where the vehicles could access them. And so this lasted for half an hour. And when ambulances were called, this is a military region, we cannot come there, was the answer. They later come, but then when they come, the military stop them. This is an operation zone, we cannot let you in. So even the vehicles cannot reach them. So the mutilated bodies were collected, the pieces were collected by the villagers. There were 13 people wounded. Only one of them was saved. The others,
Yani daha giderken yaşadıklarını fark ediyorlar.
uh,
Orada yaşamlarını yitiriyorlar.
they
Bu
lose their
insanların
lives while being carried.
e,
One group remained under the
onlara
rocks.
kazma kürekle
Only in the morning, their
maalesef
bodies, their
enkazları
corpses,
uzaklaştırmaya
were
çalışıyorlar.
recovered
Bugünlerde de belki
uh,
görmüşsünüz. Yani
by digging.
görüntülerle
Um,
ortaya koyuyorlar. Ve
you may
sonrasında
have
tabii
seen
büyük bir
the pictures, the
travma,
images.
büyük bir acı
This is, of
ve
course,
insanların bu
a
şekilde
terrible
bir
trauma.
katliamla karşılaşması büyük bir öfkeye de neden
And
oluyor.
this, of course, causes
Yine
rage among
yine
the
bu
villagers.
katliam böyle sıradan bir katliam değil. Yanlışlıkla yapılan bir
This is
katliam değil.
not any
Bilinçli bir
old
katliam.
massacre that
Başlatılması
was
başında ileri bir
committed
şekilde. Bu
by
insanlar
mistake.
biliniyor.
This was
Bunların
totally
kimler olduğu
consciously decided.
hatta soy ağaçlarına kadar
It was
bilinen
deliberate.
insanlardı.
These
İlk defa
people are
yapıldığı
known to the
kesinlikle
military. This is
ben
not
dahil
some the
Kerem
first
dahil
time
sınırda
that this kind of thing.
binlerce defa karşı tarafa geçip oradan işte muzzle şeklinde
We always cross. I did this
bomba
myself. You know,
atışlarını
we cross the border.
gerçekleştirdiğini ve
We go
bunu
to the
yaparken
villages on the other side. We
Turkish
buy
tarafından
sugar or
bilinçli
cigarettes or others.
bildirilmişti. Bu
This is
bölgede
not something that only certain people
3-4
practice.
tane köy var ve
There are
köylerin
3 or 4
tamamı
villages in that
bombalandı
region.
ve
The overall population is around
diyor
8 to 10,
binlerce insan bu
9,000.
tarafa geçirildiğini
Sometimes
ve gelirken
on the
araçlarla
same
karşılaşmadılar ve
occasion,
gerçekten şeker de
a
çok fazlaydı.
thousand people
Silahları
crossed the
ellerinde silah
frontier.
verilmişti ve
And when they met the
bomba
military, the soldiers on their way back, the soldiers were offered packs of cigarettes or sugar. Yes, there was sometimes, a kind of run and hide and hide and seek sort of situation between the soldiers and the people who had crossed the border, but everyone was very much used to this kind of trade activity, and there are paths that people use all the time. The fact that these people were bombed shows that this was a deliberate massacre. This was a message for some people. And trying to sever the relations between the two sides. Of course, later, the families who confronted this massacre, who were the victims because they had lost their next of kin, of course, demanded that the perpetrators be found and punished. But unfortunately, the mentality that committed this massacre simply disregarded the demand for justice, repressing the demands, threatening people, and tried to shut them up through different manners. We could not even grieve. For 3 days, we grieved. We mourned. Of course, tens of thousands of people came to share our grief. It is very clear that this is a very conscious and deliberate massacre on the part of the state. It's not, of course, acceptable that the representatives of the state come to share our grief. We only saw the bombing agents of the state that night. So the coming of these people to wish the family's condolence is not acceptable. So they provoked the period of condolence, that we traditionally had. And together with the expression of that rage, it's as if they said our families were lynching the district governor of the state. So they put all this in the file and they tried to make this a threat on the villagers. As if this were not sufficient, the families went to the district governor's office and said, there are perpetrators of this massacre. We are here to complain and ask that an investigation be opened up. Without listening to them, rather than listening to them, they they really repelled them. Of course, Kerem Altiparmak will be talking about this, the legal aspect. So I'm only taking up the political and aspect and the sentimental aspect from the point of view of the family's reactions. Turning this into a kind of political movement, we went to the Grand National Assembly of Turkey, starting with the AKP, all parties. Although we knew that the AKP was responsible in this massacre, we really displayed our best intentions. We said, well, you know, we should we should really look into the people responsible for this massacre. We even talked with the MHP. In this struggle for justice, we really expressed this in Parliament. There was the Peace and Democracy Party, which is of the same family of parties as the HDP. All kinds of investigation commissions were demanded, etc. One investigation commission was established. They came and listened to the families. But in the end, this commission said this was a grave error. This was a deliberate massacre. 34 people had lost their lives. Since that time, up until today, not one person has been prosecuted for this. Not even one person was expelled from office or simply brought aside so that they could be investigated. This massacre, this repression, I received death threats again and again from the military. I received death threats from the bureaucrats there. If you don't really let go of this whole affair, we will show you what will happen. So 34 people lost their lives, and they said that this was a grave error. 5 deputies, members of parliament, 1 CHP, 1 HDP, 1 MHP, and 5 AKP deputies, 8 people in all. There was an opinion of dissent on the part of the CHP and HDP deputies, but with the votes of the AKP majority, this was said to be a grave error. many human rights defenders came in.
Meseleyi anlatan, katliamın nasıl gerçekleştiğini anlatan, bu katliamın sorunların açığa çıkarılmasını talep eden,
how this massacre came about, and they demanded that the perpetrators be penalized. And we went to the Grand National Assembly many times over and tried to establish contact with various political parties. However, in the end, we are almost commemorating the 10th anniversary of this massacre, and nothing happened. No remedy for the traumatized families, no remedy whatsoever. They, the anger and the hurt deepened, and the political will is blindsided, and there are no celebrations taking place anymore in those villages. We used to celebrate and contact the peoples that live over the border, and we had many weddings, and this is a village, mind you, where weddings and celebrations and different kinds of festivities were taking place every other day, very frequently, so lots of joy and enjoyment. But this has all changed, and this is also very traumatizing for the entire territory and the country. Unfortunately, this massacre happened, and the ones that perpetrated this massacre tried to bury this massacre. They tried to present what happened in a different light, also towards the international arena. This is the current situation. This is what we are facing. The latest with Roboski is the following, and this will present the end of my speech here. After the Roboski massacre happened, this event was taken up in light of the anti-terror law 100+23, and compensation was issued, but this is considered in our eyes as blood money. We didn't ask, or we didn't demand to be compensated in the material sense or in any other way. This is a matter of international human rights, and we wanted to claim our rights that we are entitled to claim pertaining to international covenants and conventions. And our demand, this very demand of ours, could only be actualized if the perpetrators were penalized, identified, and brought to justice. This is not any other massacre where just a few people lost their lives. This is a mass hyphen Ecker, so a massive event, and those that perpetrated this massacre is also a reflection of a very deep-rooted problem. We wanted this problem to be solved because we have been killed in this territory, in this country, for much longer than 10 years. We step on mines, on landmines. Our language is prohibited. We are not allowed to speak our own mother tongue. We are discriminated against, or we have been discriminated against for much, much longer than 10 years. And we said, we wanted to make a statement and said, never again, never again. because we didn't want anybody else to suffer what we have suffered because of this and because of many other events. This geography, this territory, this country should never be the stage for similar massacres anymore. No discrimination anymore because of your ethnic background and other reasons and backgrounds. This was our demand, but at the end of the day, zero on the table. And Kerem will elaborate on this, I'm sure. Many families currently are being discriminated against because of the current anti-terror law in place. And families have been materially compensated. I'm not sure what the amount they have been compensated with is in dollars right now, because the currency's exchange rate is over the charts, but this is the current situation right now. And may I say, they are so assured of themselves because they know they will not be brought in front of a judge. They will not be brought to the courthouse. They know that. This is a very explicit violation of the right to life. And even the European Court of Human Rights has considered our application inadmissible. This is unacceptable, and our only hope that remains is the following. If the ruling government were to change, if the executive powers were to change one day in Turkey, there might be a slight grain of hope for us, in the hopes that this dossier, this file, this case of ours might be put on the agenda once again. I cannot think of any other way out anymore. This is our only hope left, because everybody is blindfolded. They don't see, they don't want to hear, and they don't want to speak about this. Amongst the ones that lost their lives, there were children, people that went to schools, that held hopes and had dreams concerning their future, but unfortunately, these people's dreams and hopes were shattered literally by those bombs that were thrown. This is unfortunately the situation that we're facing. And of course, you get emotional when you talk about these things, because you are extremely going back to those days when this happened, but you have to remain calm, and you have to look for other remedies. And mind you, the pressure is still ongoing. And this makes you angry. This makes you very upset. And I'm not sure, I think my emotionality right now is a little bit reflected in my voice. Apologies for that, if I couldn't keep a calm and cool head. But let me come to the end of this round, and then if you should have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you.